Have you ever wondered how people kept their food fresh before modern refrigerators, freezers, and vacuum packaging systems, especially in the Middle Ages, when there was no electricity or industrial cooling? People developed creative and nature-friendly methods to preserve their food. What's interesting is that some of these methods are still used in rural areas or traditional kitchens. In this video, we will explain in detail all the methods used in the Middle Ages for cooling and food preservation. In the Middle Ages, salt was not just a seasoning. It was a powerful tool for food preservation. Did you know that one of the oldest food preservation methods we still use today originated in the Middle Ages? Salting, either through dry application or brine, was essential for survival in an era without refrigeration. Salt works by drawing moisture out of food, creating an environment where bacteria and mold struggle to grow. Two main methods were used: dry salting and brining. Dry salting involved rubbing salt directly onto meat or fish and layering it in containers. Brining, on the other hand, submerged food in a saltwater solution, which could be enhanced with herbs or vinegar to further inhibit bacterial growth. In coastal communities, especially, brining was a popular technique for preserving fish like herring and cod. These salted fish could be stored for months, transported across long distances, and consumed without refrigeration. In inland areas, meat such as pork or beef was often dry salted and hung in cool, dark cellars. Aside from practical use, salting began shaping the culinary identity of regions. The techniques and flavors developed centuries ago laid the groundwork for many dishes we still enjoy today. Think of prosciutto in Italy, bacalhau in Portugal, or pastrama in Turkey. All have their roots in medieval salting methods. Today, modern refrigeration has made salt preservation less essential, but not obsolete. Artisanal food producers, traditional cooks, and survivalists still embrace salting for its flavor-enhancing properties and historical value. From pickles to smoked meats, salting remains a revered and practical tradition. In summary, salting in the Middle Ages was more than just a preservation method, it was a way of life. It kept food edible, ensured trade and survival, and created flavors that have stood the test of time. Whether submerged in brine or packed in layers of coarse salt, medieval people knew how to make food last, and in many parts of the world, they still do. In an age without electricity, drying food was one of the simplest, most accessible, and most reliable methods for long-term storage, and it's still used all over the world today. During the Middle Ages, drying was a key strategy to preserve fruits, vegetables, herbs, meat, and fish. The process is based on a straightforward principle: remove moisture to prevent bacteria, yeast, and mold from thriving. Since microorganisms need water to grow, eliminating moisture extends a food's shelf life dramatically. Sun drying was the most common technique, especially in warm and dry regions. Fruits like plums, grapes, and figs were laid out on flat surfaces, often cloth or wooden boards, and left under the sun for several days. Herbs were hung upside down in shaded, airy spaces to preserve their oils and aroma. In colder or wetter climates, oven drying, or drying near a hearth like on wooden racks or hooks above a fireplace, was used instead. These methods required constant attention to prevent overheating or burning. Meat and fish were also dry, often after being salted to enhance the preservation effect. Dried cod, stockfish, and jerky are two well-known examples. These protein-rich foods became essential travel supplies for soldiers, sailors, and traders due to their lightweight and long shelf life. In monastic communities, drying was taken seriously. Monks would organize seasonal drying sessions and store preserved goods in cool, dark cellars. Drying didn't just extend food availability. It also ensured that communities could survive during harsh winters or sieges. Interestingly, drying also intensified flavors, creating rich, concentrated tastes. Dried fruits became prized ingredients in medieval pies and stews. Dried meat was often rehydrated in broth or wine before cooking. This technique led to a unique culinary heritage, some of which is still visible in traditional dishes today. Long before refrigeration, medieval people discovered that smoke wasn't just for warmth or cooking, it was a powerful tool for food preservation. Smoking food, especially meat and fish, helped communities survive through harsh winters, wars, and food shortages. Hot smoking involved exposing food to direct heat and smoke from a fire. This method partially cooked the food while preserving it. Hot smoked meats were eaten soon after smoking or stored for short periods. This technique was commonly used in villages where people could prepare food frequently. Cold smoking, on the other hand, was a slower and more delicate process. Food was placed in a chamber where it could absorb smoke without being cooked. This process could take days or even weeks, allowing the smoke to deeply penetrate the food. Cold smoked meats or fish were often salted first and could be stored for much longer periods, sometimes several months. Smoking was especially important in northern and coastal regions, where fresh fish like herring, mackerel, and salmon needed to be preserved quickly after being caught. In inland areas, people smoked pork, beef, sausages, and game meat. Many households had dedicated smokehouses, often small wooden huts or underground cellars, with a chimney for slow-burning fires made from hardwoods like oak, hickory, or beech. Monasteries and castles sometimes had large-scale smoking facilities, where preserved food would be prepared for entire communities. Nobles and kings even developed preferences for certain types of smoked delicacies, making smoking not only practical, but also a status symbol. Smoking also had ritual and seasonal significance. Autumn was the peak season for slaughtering livestock and preserving meat for the winter. Communities would gather, salt the meat, hang it in smokehouses, and store it away, a process that fostered cooperation and cultural tradition. Fermentation wasn't just a medieval trick for preserving food. It was a cornerstone of health, flavor, and survival. Long before anyone understood the science of microbes, people discovered that controlled spoilage could actually make food safer, tastier, and longer-lasting. In the Middle Ages, fermentation was a common household practice used to preserve vegetables, dairy, grains, and beverages. The key principle behind fermentation is that beneficial bacteria or yeasts transform sugars and starches into acids, gases, or alcohol, creating an environment hostile to harmful microbes. This natural process not only extended the shelf life of food, but also made it more nutritious and digestible. One of the most well-known fermented foods was sauerkraut, made by packing shredded cabbage with salt and letting it ferment in a cool cellar. The salt draws out moisture and creates a brine, where lactic acid bacteria flourish. The result, a tangy, vitamin-rich food that could last through the winter months. Dairy fermentation was equally vital. In regions where refrigeration didn't exist, fresh milk would spoil within hours. But by transforming it into cheese, yogurt, or kefir, medieval people could enjoy dairy for weeks or even months. Cheesemaking became a deeply respected craft, with monasteries across Europe specializing in specific types, some of which, like Roquefort and Gouda, are still enjoyed today. Fermentation also had cultural and spiritual meaning. It was often seen as a mystical process food that came alive on its own. In fact, many fermentation rituals were tied to religion or folklore, and fermented foods were served during special feasts and holidays. What makes fermentation especially fascinating is that many of these methods still thrive today, not just for preservation, but for health. Modern research confirms that fermented foods support gut health, boost immunity, and enhance nutrient absorption. In the medieval world, fermentation was a quiet miracle. Without knowing exactly how it worked, people harnessed invisible forces to transform raw ingredients into food that lasted, nourished, and delighted. From the bubbling of a cheese cave to the fizz of a fermented drink, fermentation kept the medieval table full and shaped much of what we still eat today. Imagine preserving meat, milk, or vegetables without any electricity. In the Middle Ages, people mastered the art of using the earth, stone, and even harvested ice to keep food fresh. Cold storage was one of the most brilliant and sustainable techniques of the era. While modern freezers and refrigerators are recent inventions, the logic behind cold preservation is ancient. Medieval people knew that lower temperatures slowed down bacterial growth and enzymatic reactions that cause food to spoil. With this understanding, they built smart structures and used natural seasonal patterns to create cold environments. No machines required. One of the most ingenious inventions was the ice house or ice cellar. These were specially designed underground chambers or stone buildings, often built near noble estates, monasteries, or wealthy households. During the coldest months of winter, workers would harvest ice from frozen lakes and rivers, pack it tightly into these insulated structures, and cover it with straw, sawdust, or layers of earth. Thanks to the insulation, the ice would last for months, sometimes even until summer, turning these buildings into early refrigerators. Food stored in ice houses included fresh meat, fish, dairy products, fruits, and delicate desserts. In elite households, they even used ice to chill wine or create early forms of sorbet for royal banquets. While ice houses were a luxury, they symbolized medieval innovation and the desire to extend nature's benefits beyond the seasons. More common among everyday people was the use of root cellars, cool, dark underground rooms or pits built into hillsides or beneath homes. These natural refrigerators maintained a steady temperature and humidity year-round, perfect for storing root vegetables like carrots, turnips, onions, and potatoes once introduced. Barrels of salted meat or jars of pickled food were also stored here, maximizing space and freshness. The design of medieval homes also reflected cooling needs. Thick stone walls, small windows, and shaded pantries kept indoor temperatures low, especially in monastic kitchens or castle basements. In mountainous regions or colder climates, outdoor snow pits or naturally cold caves were also used to store perishables during the warmer months. Cold storage wasn't just about convenience, it was vital for survival. During food shortages, sieges, or long winters, these methods provided access to nutritious food when nothing fresh was growing. In times of war or famine, a well-stocked ice cellar could mean the difference between life and death. The principle was simple: cold temperature slowed down spoilage. But the application, that was pure genius. The wealthy and powerful constructed ice houses, deep stone or brick structures, often built underground or shaded from the sun. During the depths of winter, teams would harvest large blocks of ice from frozen rivers and lakes, then insulate them with straw, sawdust, and earth to keep the cold sealed in. These icy reserves would last well into the summer, providing a year-round cooling solution. What was stored in them? Meat, fish, butter, milk, fruits, and even early versions of chilled desserts, all kept safe from spoilage in a time when the heat could ruin food in mere hours. Nobles and monasteries used ice to cool wines, present exotic dishes, or entertain royalty with cold treats. In fact, the ability to preserve ice through summer became a symbol of prestige. Cold storage wasn't reserved just for the elite. Common folk across Europe used root cellars, underground storage rooms dug beneath homes or carved into hillsides. These natural cool chambers held barrels of pickled cabbage, salted meat, or dried grains. Vegetables like turnips, carrots, beets, onions, and garlic were carefully stacked in straw or sand, staying crisp and edible through the long winter. Some villagers used caves, stone wells, or even snow pits lined with herbs or ferns. In mountain regions, the snow itself became a storage ally. Certain foods were even deliberately buried under snow to stay fresh, turning the landscape into a giant freezer. The architectural design of medieval buildings often reflected a deep understanding of temperature control. Thick walls of stone or clay, shaded areas, and deep pantries built into north-facing walls helped reduce heat exposure. Monastic kitchens and castle basements served as natural cool zones, where perishables could be stored in jars, barrels, and earthen pots. So next time you open your refrigerator, remember, it all started with a frozen lake, a block of ice, and a deep respect for nature's rhythm. So next time you open your refrigerator, remember, it all started with a frozen lake, a block of ice, and a deep respect for nature's rhythm. Did you enjoy exploring these forgotten food secrets of the Middle Ages? Then don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and ring the bell so you won't miss more fascinating journeys into history, survival, and ancient wisdom. Because sometimes the old ways are still the smartest ways.